About History series. How English to be Fluency as Hacking.
Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome everyone to today's explainer. We are looking at one of the most highly effective, yet honestly, kind of counterintuitive language learning methods out there. It's called the Fluent Forever method, created by Gabriel Wyner, and it's just this absolutely fascinating look at how you can literally rewire your brain to pick up any language at breakneck speed. So, picture this. Imagine studying a foreign language for 5 grueling years. You ace every single test, you're getting perfect grades across the board. But then, when it actually comes time to open your mouth and speak to a real human being, nothing. Zero. Crickets. Well, that is exactly what happened to Gabriel Wyner. From 1996 to 2001, he took high school Russian, got straight A's, but he later admitted that he couldn't hold even a 1-minute conversation with anyone. I mean, if you've ever felt that soul-crushing frustration of studying for years and still not being able to speak, believe me, you are not alone. But Gabriel realized something huge. The problem wasn't his brain. It was the fundamental way we've all been taught to learn.
That brings us to Section 1, the unlikely laboratory. Back in 2002, young, a bit rebellious, and clearly looking for a serious challenge, Gabriel made a totally bizarre academic decision at the University of Southern California. He chose to double major in mechanical engineering and vocal performance. I mean, talk about a total clash of worlds, right? By day, he is swimming in plasma physics and calculus, the cold, hard, ruthless efficiency of engineering. But by night, he's throwing on costumes and singing opera. And here is the crazy part. This exact clash, applying the hyper-efficient logical mindset of an engineer to the purely auditory art of singing, that actually became the secret sauce for his entire language learning method.
See, in the opera world, there's a strict, unbreakable rule. If you are going to sing a German opera, you have to sing it in perfect German. If your pronunciation is even a little bit off, you fail. Simple as that. So Gabriel was forced to learn languages the way singers do, which is radically different from traditional school. Singers aren't sitting there translating text back and forth. No, they are mastering the international phonetic alphabet. They are literally staring intensely at how a native speaker's mouth shapes a vowel, and they are perfecting just one single sound at a time until it is indistinguishable from a native speaker. This intense, laser-focused auditory training, that gave Gabriel his very first taste of genuine language success. Let's move on to Section 2, Hubris and the 15-minute catastrophe. Okay, so armed with this earlier success of learning German in just 7 weeks at a language camp, Gabriel got, well, a little too confident. He decided he didn't need full immersion anymore. He thought, hey, I'm my own brain engineer. So living in Vienna around 2007, he tried to build what he thought was this ultimate language harvesting machine to hack French. But it was pretty much the perfect recipe for disaster. He studied French in his spare time using isolated flashcards, but he totally skipped the foundational ear training that had saved him with German. Then, when it came time to take the Middlebury placement test for French, he completely panicked. He actually cheated using Google Translate and grammar websites. And the worst part, it worked entirely too well. He totally bypassed the beginner levels and got placed straight into the advanced class. Which, of course, brings us to the catastrophe. To confirm his advanced placement, he had to pass a face-to-face 15-minute oral exam with a French professor. When the teacher started speaking, Gabriel just froze. I mean, it didn't even sound like French to him. He couldn't string together a single coherent sentence. It was just 15 minutes of pure, humiliating silence. His pride was absolutely crushed. But back in his room later, while dissecting this massive failure, he had a profound realization. He said words without sound are just text bubbles floating in the brain. The absolute key takeaway here is that because he skipped the pronunciation and ear training, his brain simply could not recognize those words when they were spoken out loud. You literally cannot skip training your ears. It's impossible. And that sets up Section 3, building the language machine. Honestly, that devastating failure was exactly what he needed. Gabriel dusted himself off and completely re-engineered his approach. He looked around and realized the ultimate formula for language learning actually already existed out there. It was just scattered across a bunch of different disciplines. So he combined them into 3 incredibly sturdy pillars of fluency. First up, pronunciation first, borrowed straight from the music conservatories. Second, no translation, taken from Middlebury's famous language pledge. And third, spaced repetition, pulled from cognitive science and software like Anki to effectively hack the brain's forgetting curve.
Now, if you're wondering whether this Frankenstein system actually holds up in the real world, well, his speed of acquisition just skyrocketed. Once he locked in these 3 pillars, look at this timeline. It took him 14 weeks for German, 2 months for Italian, 5 months to finally conquer that French, and 10 months for Russian. Ultimately, he mastered 7 different languages using this exact framework. It absolutely proves that with the right system, foreign languages shift from being this impossible mountain to climb into a totally accessible, almost fun puzzle.
So how do we actually execute Pillar 1, the pronunciation part? Well, it starts with something called minimal pairs. It's a simple idea, but it is so powerful. A minimal pair is basically just 2 words that differ by one single microscopic sound. Think sheep versus ship, or thinking versus sinking. If you don't actively train your ear to hear the tiny difference between these specific sounds in a new language, your brain just lumps them together into a useless sound blob. You have to train your ear to hear those differences first. If you don't, you'll never be able to memorize the words properly.
Next up, Section 4, the vocabulary shortcut. Okay, so once your ears are perfectly tuned, you need words. But, and this is crucial, not just any words. I want to explicitly challenge you right now. Stop wasting your time memorizing rare, obscure words when you're just starting out. The data on this is actually incredibly liberating. A typical language has hundreds of thousands of words, right? Which feels totally paralyzing. But mastering just the 1,000 most common words gives you a massive 80% comprehension of that language in everyday scenarios. The remaining 20% takes up a hugely disproportionate amount of effort. So your sole focus on day 1 should be ruthlessly targeting only those high-frequency words. Gabriel actually took this logic a step further. He curated a really strict list of exactly 625 foundational words. These are spread out across 26 basic relatable topics, and the absolute key here is that they are highly visual. Think of words like dog, apple, cool, words you can immediately and clearly picture in your mind's eye. Everyone, and I mean everyone, needs to start their language journey with these 625 foundational words before moving on to anything remotely abstract or complex. Now for Section 5, hacking the forgetting curve. Because knowing what words to learn is really only half the battle. How do you guarantee you'll actually remember them tomorrow or next week or next year? That requires spaced repetition software, or SRS, like the hugely popular app Anki. Let's meticulously dissect the anatomy of Gabriel's perfect flashcard. On the front, you have the target word, let's say Masha, which is cat in Russian. But the back, that is where the real magic happens. Notice what is conspicuously missing. There's absolutely zero English, no native translation allowed, period. Instead, the back contains a vivid image of a cat, a crisp recording of a native speaker saying the word, and crucially, a deeply personal memory. Like not just any cat, but your friend Lily's specific tabby cat. Let's lean into the neuroscience for a second to explain exactly why this works so incredibly well. It's based on Hebbian theory, which famously states, neurons that fire together wire together. If you just passively try to memorize the generic word cat, the neural connection in your brain is weak. It's easily broken. But if you link the foreign word matcha to your friend Lily's specific tabby cat, recalling the actual texture of its fur or the sunny afternoon you spent petting it, you are suddenly firing multiple neurons all at once. Visual, emotional, auditory. They wire together permanently in your brain, making the word virtually impossible to forget.
And this brings up a massive distinction that I think 99% of learners miss: active recall versus passive review. Passive review is just staring comfortably at a vocabulary list. It's an illusion of learning. It feels super productive, but it isn't. Active recall, on the other hand, is the struggle. When you look at the front of that flashcard and literally force your brain to dig for the answer, that physical, slightly uncomfortable brain struggle is exactly what you want. That struggle signals your hippocampus to release a hit of dopamine, which essentially stamps the memory with a big label that says, hey, this is important, keep this.
Which naturally leads us to Section 6, why 90% of learners quit. Look, even with this flawless, scientifically backed system, human error and our own flawed psychology often just get in the way. The harsh reality is that 90% of learners still quit. Gabriel brilliantly outlines 3 massive flashcard death traps that you absolutely must avoid. First, burnout. Do not, under any circumstances, binge 500 cards on day 1. Because the algorithm will just make you review hundreds of them tomorrow, you'll get completely overwhelmed and you will quit. 10 to 15 new cards a day is the absolute sweet spot. Second,
secretly writing your native translation on the back of the card. It entirely ruins that direct-to-concept mental pathway we just talked about. And third, treating the app as fake progress, just mindlessly clicking through cards to feel productive without doing the hard work of active recall. Listen, Anki won't magically save you. Only 15 minutes of daily, genuine struggle will.
All right, so we've got the pronunciation dialed in, we have the core vocabulary mapped out, and we have the spaced repetition to remember it all permanently. But all of this leads to one absolutely crucial question. How on earth do you actually practice speaking if you don't have a partner? Back in 2010, when Gabriel was running his experiments, the only real way was to travel abroad or drop thousands of dollars on immersive language camps.
But today, we are right in the middle of something entirely new. Artificial intelligence is completely solving that speaking gap. You can now have a tireless, perfectly native-sounding AI partner right in your pocket. It's ready to converse with you anytime, correcting your minimal pairs, and keeping you engaged without an ounce of human judgment. The foundational system has been perfected, and the very last barrier of finding a speaking partner has officially fallen. So the only question left for us is, with all these incredible tools at your disposal today, are you ready to finally hack your brain and become fluent?